Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. Pakistan violates pause in military action within hours of reaching understanding with India. Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri calls it breach of pact, says adequate and appropriate response given by armed forces to the violations. Prime Minister Narendra Modi holds high-level meeting at his residence following agreement to stop firing and military actions between India and Pakistan to review situation. India's External Affairs Minister says country consistently maintained firm and uncompromising stance against terrorism and will continue to do so. On Saturday night, just hours after an understanding on stoppage of firing was announced, Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri said there have been repeated violations of the understanding. Briefing reporters in New Delhi, the Foreign Secretary said armed forces are giving an adequate and appropriate response to these violations, and New Delhi takes a very serious note of these violations.
कार्रवाई कर रही है और इस सीमा अतिक्रमण से निपट रही है। ये अतिक्रमण अत्यंत ही निंदनीय है और पाकिस्तान इनके लिए जिम्मेदार है। हमारा मानना है कि पाकिस्तान इस स्थिति को ठीक से समझे और इस अतिक्रमण को रोकने के लिए तुरंत उचित कार्रवाई करे। सेना ने इस स्थिति पर कड़ी नजर रखी हुई है और उसे किसी भी अतिक्रमण से निपटने के लिए ठोस और सख्त कदम उठाने के लिए आदेश दे दिए गए। गुड इवनिंग। For the last few hours, there have been repeated violations of the understanding arrived at earlier this evening between the Directors General of Military Operations of India and Pakistan. This is a breach of the understanding arrived at earlier today. The armed forces are giving an adequate and appropriate response to these violations, and we take very, very serious notice of these violations. We call upon Pakistan to take appropriate steps to address these violations and deal with the situation with seriousness and responsibility. The armed forces are maintaining a strong vigil on the situation. They have been given instructions to deal strongly with any instances of a repetition of the violations of the border along the international border as well as the line of control.
Earlier, India and Pakistan agreed to a stoppage of all firing and military action on Saturday. Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri said the Director General of Military Operations of Pakistan called the Indian counterpart at 15:35 hours IST on Saturday. It was agreed between them that both sides would stop all firing and military action on land and in the air and sea with effect from 1700 hours Indian Standard Time on Saturday. Instructions were given on both sides to give effect to the understanding. The Director Generals of Military Operations will talk again on 12th of May at 1200 hours. Following the announcement, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar wrote on X, and I quote him here, India and Pakistan have worked out an understanding on stoppage of firing and military action. India has consistently maintained a firm and uncompromising stance against terrorism in all its forms and manifestations. It will continue to do so. All right, India's Akshay Dongre joins us live from New Delhi to talk more on this. Good morning, Akshay. India and Pakistan agreed and according to the understanding, no firing and military action with effect from 1700 IST Saturday. But loss of faith and commitment by Pakistan, it came as a shock, or Pakistan being Pakistan as far as the history is concerned?
Well, the history of Pakistan is notorious, yes, but it did come as a shock. Not only because an understanding was met in good faith, and the top leadership of both the countries were in fact involved as far as this commitment of ceasefire is concerned. But what we saw was a blatant violation of that understanding of trust once again, not only of India, because Pakistan has a habit of breaking trust of India time and again. However, this time it was also in a way a slap in the face for the US government as well, because it was the US president who also announced that he mediated in this particular ceasefire. However, and he also took credit for it. Also, we saw how Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, mentioned J.D. Vance and himself as far as negotiations are concerned. But what transpired is the fact that Pakistan has clearly said, even to the US, that whatever decision that the government is taking will not be implemented, at least by the army, because both the organizations, the military and the executive, which is the government, they are not working in any kind of coordination, or the government has no control over the Pakistani military. Now that's the most surprising part, but the even more surprising part is the fact that how China has now come out saying that it is going to stand by Pakistan. So clearly that seems to have sort of cleared some sort of confusion. Perhaps the Pakistani army are working on its own. Because yesterday evening, in fact, yesterday at about near midnight, Shehbaz Sharif held a press conference, and the most surprising part to our viewers would be the fact that he did not even mention ceasefire violation. He just said that a ceasefire has been implemented, and then took credit for the whole thing, falsely, once again spreading sort of propaganda. However, one thing that came as a major thing was the fact that Shehbaz Sharif, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, accepted that a lot of casualties of Pakistani armed forces have taken place in this conflict that took place between the two countries. So the situation is being understood even right now. It's being responded. Retaliations are being done. Air raid sirens also are active in many of the cities, and they were active in many of the cities last night. So the situation is being monitored and being retaliated proportionately. But as far as ceasefire is concerned, it doesn't seem like it was anything more than just a wishful thinking, because on the ground it was absolutely not implemented by the Pakistani army.
Yes, Akshay, it puts us in a different situation. A lot of uncertainty also. But again, what is the situation on the ground, Akshay? There have been blackouts again, sirens blaring, people now again on guard. Do you have the list of Indian cities, especially border areas, under blackout?
Well, no official, nothing as such official has been issued by the government as far as cities are concerned. But what we know for sure, and that is in fact documented from state government of Jammu and Kashmir, that Srinagar did see several blasts that include most of them being the drones being intercepted and being neutralized in the air itself. So those large sounds may most probably be that. However, if you are talking about the ground situation in other cities, our reporters have been also around the clock informing that there have been air raid sirens, especially in Amritsar. Several air raid sirens were there. In Jalandhar also. So these are some local sources claiming these things. However, an official confirmation has to come. As of now, the Ministry of External Affairs has not disclosed any time for a press briefing. But we are just waiting for an official briefing by the Ministry of Defense and the Ministry of External Affairs. But it clearly seems that the trust and the understanding that was made last night was broken by Pakistan in another attempt of misadventure.
All right, Akshay, we'll leave it at that. Thank you for getting us the latest on that story. After the big announcement, Prime Minister Narendra Modi chaired a high-level meeting at his residence. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, 3 service chiefs and Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri attended the meeting along with other top officials. Meanwhile, earlier, according to government sources, India has asserted that any future act of terror will be considered as an act of war against it, and New Delhi will respond accordingly. And the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has welcomed the understanding reached between India and Pakistan, terming it as a positive step towards ending current hostilities and easing tensions. He hoped the agreement will contribute to lasting peace and foster an environment conducive to addressing broader, long-standing issues between the two countries. He added that the United Nations stands ready to support efforts aimed at promoting peace and stability in the region. Meanwhile, security personnel at Nagrota military station in Jammu sector noticed suspicious movement late Saturday night near the perimeter and responded, triggering a brief exchange of fire with the suspect. The sentry sustained a minor injury during the incident. Security forces have launched a massive search operation in the area to track down the intruder or intruders. The situation remains under control as the search continues. Further details are awaited. The Home Secretary Govind Mohan held a video conference with the Chief Secretaries of all states bordering Pakistan to ensure all civil defence preparations are completed. This video conferencing was conducted by the Home Secretary in view of the current situation. Border state Punjab remains on red alert, ensuring abundant caution. Amritsar Deputy Commissioner implemented the blackout as a precautionary measure last night. She urged everyone to stay indoors, away from windows and remain calm. Earlier, she withdrew all restrictive orders imposed within the district except the restriction on civilian drone flying. Normal work may resume as usual. Meanwhile, authorities are repeatedly asking citizens to refrain from spreading or believing in unverified rumors and said that for accurate and official updates, always rely on trusted government sources. Director General of the Border Security Force and all ranks on Sunday paid tribute to BSF Sub-Inspector Mohammad Imtiaz after he lost his life during cross-border firing by Pakistan along the international boundary in the Araspura area of Jammu. Taking to X, BSF said, and I quote, "DG BSF and all ranks salute the supreme sacrifice made by BSF Sub-Inspector Mohammad Imtiaz in service to the nation on 10th May 2025 during cross-border firing by Pakistan along the international boundary in Araspura near Jammu. Prahari Parivar stands firm with the bereaved family in this trying time." Earlier, the BSF also informed that a wreath-laying ceremony with full honours will be held on May 11 at Frontier Headquarters Jammu, Pallora. In this age and time, enemies outside and their proxies have resorted to spreading fake news constantly to disrupt the collectiveness and to break down the morale of our countrymen. Ministry of Information and Broadcasting has been continuously posting, refuting them, aiming to crush the fake news that is being disseminated. And the Press Information Bureau took to X to debunk Colonel Sophia Qureshi and Commander Vyomika Singh's fake social media accounts. The Press Information Bureau's fact-checking unit has clarified that neither Wing Commander Vyomika Singh nor Colonel Sophia Qureshi is present on X. A message circulating on WhatsApp suggesting that the Ministry of Defence has issued civil preparedness instructions due to India-Pakistan situation has been declared fake by Press Information Bureau. The government has not released any such directive. The Ministry of Defence has encouraged the public to follow its official WhatsApp channel to stay informed and avoid falling for misinformation. The Press Information Bureau has clarified that several combat video game clips are falsely being shared as usual as actual footage of a recent India-Pakistan conflict. It has urged people not to be misled by such propagandist content. All right, still to come on this edition of DD India Live. Russian president proposes holding direct talks with Ukraine in Istanbul on Thursday, says Ukraine talks should aim to eliminate root cause of conflict. The United States and Iran will hold another round of nuclear talks Sunday in Oman ahead of President Trump's visit to Gulf nations. And Donald Trump hails progress after first day of US-China trade talks. Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Some more stories. Russian President Vladimir Putin on Sunday proposed holding direct talks with Ukraine in Istanbul on May 15. Putin said Russia was proposing direct talks with Ukraine in Istanbul in an attempt to eliminate the root causes of the conflict and to achieve the restoration of a long-term lasting peace rather than simply a pause for rearmament. The Russian president said he would speak to Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan later on Sunday to discuss the details. Putin's proposal comes hours after European leaders, including UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and French President Emmanuel Macron, visited Ukraine and urged Russia to agree to an unconditional 30-day ceasefire.
Let me remind you once again that it was not us who pulled from the negotiations in 2022. It was the Ukrainian side that did so. So despite everything, we proposed to the authorities in Kiev to resume the negotiations that they interrupted at the end of 2022 to resume direct talks, and I should like to emphasize without any preconditions. We propose that they begin without delay as early as next Thursday, 15 May, in Istanbul, where they were held earlier and where they were interrupted.
And during his statement, Putin also accused Ukraine of having repeatedly failed to respond to 3 ceasefire proposals from Moscow, a 30-day halt in attacks on energy infrastructure, the Easter truce and a ceasefire ordered last month by Putin to coincide with World War II commemorative events. Ukraine has previously said Russian attacks continued throughout these periods. Russia has made similar claims about Ukraine. And US President Donald Trump hailed talks with China and Switzerland on Saturday, saying the two sides had negotiated a total reset in a friendly but constructive manner. Though he did not elaborate on the progress, earlier top US and Chinese officials wrapped up the first day of talks in Geneva aimed at diffusing a trade war that threatens to hammer the global economy and planned to resume negotiations on Sunday. Neither side made any statements afterwards about the substance of the discussions nor signaled any specific progress towards reducing crushing tariffs as meetings at the residence of Switzerland's ambassador to the UN. Now, Iran will hold a 4th round of indirect nuclear talks with the United States on Sunday in Oman. The 4th round of negotiations, initially scheduled for May 3rd in Rome, was postponed due to logistical reasons. US President Donald Trump has threatened to bomb Iran if no agreement is reached within his administration to resolve the long-standing dispute. He withdrew the US from a 2015 nuclear deal between Iran and world powers. Western countries say Iran's nuclear program, which Tehran accelerated after the US walkout from the now moribund 2015 accord, is geared toward producing weapons, whereas Iran insists it is purely for civilian purposes. Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff plans to attend the talks in Oman. Witkoff, in an interview, said the Iranians had stated that do not want a nuclear weapon and the United States will take them at their word on this point. Meanwhile, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said on Saturday that if the United States' goal is to deprive Iran of its nuclear rights, Tehran will never back down over those rights. Araghchi was speaking in Doha as he planned visit to Qatar and Saudi Arabia on Saturday was in line with continuous consultations with neighboring countries to address their concerns and mutual interests about the nuclear issue. Iran has repeatedly said its right to enrich uranium is non-negotiable and has ruled out a zero enrichment demand by some US officials. Iran's Ayatollah in Tehran on Saturday urged Muslim nations not to forget about the plight of Palestinians in Gaza, which is facing possible famine after Israel imposed a month-long blockade on aid. Blaming the United States and Britain for the worsening the crisis in Gaza, where Israel vowed to expand its military campaign against Hamas and broke a truce in March, Khamenei urged the whole world in fact, to stand against Israel. The US is backing a mechanism for getting aid into Gaza, which would be handled by private companies, whilst US President Donald Trump is planning to visit the Middle East next week. Now, South Korea's conservatives made another about face on Saturday and reinstated their nominee Kim Moon-soo. Divided People Power Party earlier dropped him and then reinstated as they struggled for unity to challenge the Liberal frontrunner in the snap June 3rd presidential vote. The decision, which was made after polling party members got confused over whether to replace him with former Prime Minister Han Duck-soo. Now, PPP has promised to seek unity and build a big tent coalition to take on Liberal Democratic Party's candidate Lee Jae-myung when campaigning officially begins on Monday. Lee has been a clear frontrunner to replace Conservative former President Yoon Suk-yeol, who was removed from office in April for violating his duties when he declared a short-lived martial law in December. Now, Bangladesh's interim government led by Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus has banned all activities of former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's Awami League under the Anti-Terrorism Act. The decision taken at a special cabinet meeting will remain in force until the International Crimes Tribunal completes trials against the party and its leaders for alleged crimes during Hasina's rule. Sports now. Yannick Sinner made victories return to tennis after a 3-month doping ban. He swept aside Mariano Navoni in straight sets 6-3, 6-4 at the Italian Open in Rome. The Italian had not played since winning the Australian Open in January due to suspension he accepted from the World Anti-Doping Agency. For 3 times Grand Slam champion, it was not just about winning on home soil but also rebuilding the momentum. The Italian said he had his doubts going into the match and still does, but that he wasn't letting that bother him as he looks to get back into form.
Well, it's for sure on the top spot. No, it has been amazing to go again on court after such a long time, having a great support also in the last days. From the first day when I came here, it has been amazing. So yeah, I was waiting for this moment quite long time. It doesn't matter as much as all the rest matters. So I'm very happy about today. Obviously happy to play at least one more match here, and then we see how it goes.
Indian athlete Mohammad Afzal broke men's 800-meter national record at the UAE Athletics Grand Prix 2025 in Dubai. Afzal secured the second spot in the 10-man field with a timing of 45.61 seconds at Dubai Police Club Stadium. The top spot was secured by Kenya's Nicholas Kiplagat, while South Africa's Christopher Swart finished second. Afzal's time was faster than the previous national record holder, Jenson Johnson, who clocked 1 minute and 45.65 seconds during the National Interstate Championships in 2018. Well, that's all we have in this edition of DD India Live, but do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. From all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India Live.